The news you can count on. Mayport to Ponte Vedra Beach. The Island Times News Update begins right now. Here's Tom Patton.
Welcome to the Island Times News Update. I'm Tom Patton. Neptune Beach City Manager Andy Hyatt came on board in September of last year, following the resignation of former City Manager Jim Jarboe. Hyatt came to Neptune Beach from a small town in Tennessee, but he did have experience in Northeast Florida prior to taking the position. Last week, we sat down and talked with Neptune Beach City Manager Andy Hyatt about some of the changes he's already made around at City Hall and how he came to be in Neptune Beach. Andy, first of all, tell us a little bit about your background. You're relatively new to the area this time around, so give us an indication of who you are and where you came from.
Well, originally born in Charleston, South Carolina. We moved to Tennessee when I was in first grade, and I grew up there. Went to grade school, middle school, and high school there. I also went to college in Tennessee. So right after finishing with my bachelor's degree, I moved off, met my wife in South Carolina, consequently as a result of a job that I had. We got married and moved off to Texas, and then eventually went back. I decided to go back and get a master's degree so I could move into government. Got a master's in public administration. Got a position with the city of Jacksonville. Actually recruited myself. Since my wife was from Jacksonville, we wanted to come back to this area. My dad was from Florida, and I always had wanted to live in Florida, so it kind of worked out. You can't make those plans any better than we did. So after getting my master's degree, we decided that this was the area for us, North Florida. Came in and started working for the city of Jacksonville, big government, huge government, about 8,500 employees at the time just in the city, not counting the sheriff's office. And kind of felt like a small fish in a very big pond. And I really was enamored with local government, with smaller municipal government, if you will. And so I started looking around and had a friend who worked at the city of Deerfield Beach in South Florida. And that's really where I got my start with the first small city, even though it was a city of 80,000. After a while there, my goal was to become a city manager. And I put a 5-year plan in place when I came to Jacksonville in 2000. About 2004, this position opened up in Deerfield Beach. We went down there, but then my city manager position opened up in Tennessee near my parents' home where I grew up. Applied for that and decided to go there. So I moved around, managed 3 cities in Tennessee, Etowah, Fairview, and East Ridge. Kind of stayed in the EFE category. But my wife and I were looking. We have 3 children, and our youngest is in 8th grade, and we thought, okay, at the end of her high school career, when she gets into college, we will come back to Florida. This position opened up, and Tom, it was the first time that I've selected a location or a city, and then the job came with the city. Usually it's been the other way around. The city manager chooses a job, and then the city happens to come around. And having known the area a little bit, we decided that this was the right timing, the right place for us. And lo and behold, that's the only place I applied. I really wasn't looking for a position, but this was just like that one position that if it came open, that was it. A good place to spend a lot of years and make an impact. And lo and behold, we feel like we are making an impact and doing a lot of positives, and we'll continue to do that. But we're glad to be here.
So let's talk about that impact piece of it a little bit. What are some of the unique issues that you find managing a small coastal city like Neptune Beach?
Well, obviously, one thing that first strikes is the tourism, the visitors that can come, and especially here on a daily basis.
You didn't have those in Tennessee?
We didn't have a lot of this. You got this ocean over here to the east, and that tends to be a draw. Of course, you have the mountains, but it's pretty widespread as far as the tourists we get. We don't have a whole lot of hotels. We don't have a lot to draw as far as resorts, but we do have a couple in the area. And of course, sister cities here have a lot of hotels and resorts. So we tend to get, from my perspective, more local people from the city of Jacksonville that come out and visit, but we do get a lot of visitors from out of state. So that's really good. So dealing with the crowds, if you will, and even though they're not large crowds, they are crowds that we do deal with. Obviously, 4th of July is a big deal, and some of the special events that are held. But also, as you look at this, we do have some sewer lines that need to be replaced. We do have water lines that need to be replaced. They're 30, 40 years old. You typically get on about a 20, 25 year replacement cycle. There was a lot of years that wasn't a lot done. I think about a year and a half ago, the city borrowed some money. We were able to do one subdivision since we finished that, we didn't have to spend as much money as we thought, so we were able to do more, and we're continuing that this year. We'll probably put about another $200,000 in that infrastructure this year. I'm sorry, almost $2 million. I apologize. We have also asked the state legislature to include us in the budget to hopefully give us a little more money to do a couple of other projects. We have stormwater issues, obviously, and of course we're at the sea level, so we're going to have some concerns with flooding. That just goes with the territory, but we don't see any massive floods at this point. Of course, hurricanes could change that. We also had some opportunities once I got here and started looking at the budget. The council had talked a little bit about trying to reduce the budget, and a figure of 20% was thrown out there. And so the way I looked at it was I'm going to try to come up with a 3-year plan that can help us reduce 15 to 20% on the budget on our expenses. We've got a pretty good start on that with some of the things we're doing with the police department. And of course, you try to do a lot of that through attrition, through retirements and that. You don't like layoffs. I prefer not to go that route. Of course, push came to shove in lean times, you do look at that, but you don't really put that at the top of the list. We also have an opportunity to put a park plan in place. Jarboe Park hasn't had a lot of attention over the last few years. We've had a couple of other little, what I consider pocket or neighborhood parks, haven't had a lot of attention. We've already addressed the 5 ways and kind of put the 5-way intersection of Florida and Penman and Forest and put some money into the flagpoles and landscaping and that type of thing, and some new fencing, and improve that area with a little bit of money. So we try to come up with some ingenious ideas where we don't spend a lot of money and we kind of have staff that can do some things. So it's amazing how I've see as you go from city to city how talented staff can be, and they don't really realize it sometimes. And so just kind of get an idea and go forward there. And of course, working with the council can always be an opportunity that can present itself as a challenge or not. And this council has really seemed to embrace me and embrace my ideas and philosophy, and of course we've addressed some policies that kind of have gone unaddressed for a few years. And sometimes cities assume, well, we've got this policy for this, but unless it's in writing and everybody has it dispersed amongst themselves, then it's really not in place, and it's kind of hard to govern without some of those policies in place.
Yeah, that was leading into my next question, because you have implemented those policies covering everything from cell phones to city vehicle use, and then ethics and a whistleblower policy. Why do you think those are really necessary in a city the size of Neptune Beach? Well,
I think in order to get uniformity, we work with other people who come in and look at us, and not that they do things illegally, or it's just years ago it was an accepted practice, for instance, in ethics, ethically speaking, to accept gifts, to accept things from other people outside, contractors, that type of thing. We wanted to kind of tighten the belt a little bit, and what we did was we looked at what was out there. And I talked to the council, and I don't really do a lot of things without addressing the council. And say, okay, is this something, because they I recommend policy, they set policy. So what I wanted to do was put some things out there in front of them and say, okay, how does this look? How does this sound? And cell phone policy, for instance, there's been a lot of change over the years. It was a luxury item at one time. Now people have that instead of a landline. Before, when we used landlines, it was like, we weren't necessarily paying somebody for part of their landline, even though we potentially would call them at home, or they'd call in or whatever. Don't usually conduct a lot of city business or our business from my understanding on landlines, but cell phones tend to be used a little more in the line of work. We have them all day. There used to be 2-way radios, and we've kind of done away with some of that. Just in order to be consistent and not to have the appearance that maybe we were a little lax, or maybe we weren't as tight, run as tight a ship as we possibly could. We wanted to put those in place. Whistleblower policy is one that I feel like, having worked in Tennessee and with the Tennessee Valley Authority and the nuclear industry and that type of thing, I know they have a pretty good whistleblower policy, and it's not so much an I got you, but maybe like, hey, you might want to watch out for this, and some more times than not, you don't really see those policies, that particular policy used a lot, and you hope it isn't, but you want the employee to feel they've got a protection if that does come into play. So there's some things there that I thought were very important. comp time policy. It's easy for that to get out of hand. It's in our union contract. Union employees can get up to 80 hours, which is about 53.34 straight time hours since they get time and a half. So we wanted to get something in place for everybody. The Fair Labor Standards Act does not recognize comp time for exempt employees. However, exempt employees typically flex their time. So we wanted to put something right and say, okay, we're going to allow you to have a time to flex for about 20 hours a month. Because sometimes we have meetings, we have to work over for various reasons. If there's some emergency with water leak or a call out on an accident or some type of situation like that for police departments. So we wanted to give them an opportunity to, we're not going to give you any more money because it's not recognized. We don't have to. But as far as the union employees and hourly employees, non-exempt, we're required by law to pay them time and a half, either in money or in hour to hour. So if they work over. So we wanted to put those things in place just to say, okay, we do. Here it is. Here's where you go. Here's the structure that we have in place, and it seems to be something. It's not an I gotcha. It's not. We're not trying to say, okay, we've got we're going to stick it to an employee. We're going to try to get rid of an employee because of this. No, it's to encourage the employee to use their time, not to let it drag on. And we come up 6 years from now, and all of a sudden somebody's got 300 hours of comp time, and we've got to pay them for it. So that's a big hit on the budget. So it's really a budgetary item that kind of is going to help us to manage a little better.
We're talking with Neptune Beach City Manager Andy Hyatt. The Island Times News Update will be back in just a moment.
The news you can count on. The Island Times News Update will be right back.
Charlie's Tropic Heating and Air Conditioning in Atlantic Beach offers a full range of residential and commercial heating and air conditioning services, from new installation to replacement and remodeling. Charlie's Tropic Heating and Air Conditioning can keep your home comfortable year-round, and they offer preventive maintenance contracts to keep your system running at peak efficiency. Charlie's Tropic Heating and Air Conditioning is an authorized Bryant dealer and will service all brands. For year-round comfort in your home or business, contact the original Charlie's Tropic Heating and Air Conditioning at 241-1788. Beaches Academy Child Care Center in Jacksonville Beach has been offering affordable, loving child care to families in the Beaches communities for 35 years. Conveniently located on Penman Road, Beaches Academy offers care for children from infants through preschool, with programs that encourage learning and outdoor play. Our affordable tuition means families can get quality child care at a price that fits their budget. Contact Beaches Academy at 246-3885 and schedule a tour of our center. Beaches Academy, the child always comes first.
Andy, you talked a little bit earlier before the break about the budgetary process, and I understand that you're going to be starting those meetings a lot earlier for fiscal year 2016-2017 than you had in the past. What's the reasoning behind that? Well,
the reason behind that is to get the council a little more involved. What I like to do is to set our budget based off of the current year or the past year revenues. That way, if you have any additional revenue or increase in revenue coming in, you don't. That's just like extra that we can put in a savings account or put in a capital improvement account, which I think is important to have a capital improvement account, because you just never know when you got to put the roof on a building, or you got to buy a vehicle, or you've got to pave a road or something like that you just weren't expecting, or a match for a grant. So you kind of like to have that little extra savings account just for that, even though we do have put a ordinance in place where our goal is to have up to 20% of our operating revenue as reserves. And hopefully that will be in addition to that. So we can do some extra things. I know we're going to try to do some other things out here on the beach crossovers, and we'll need some funding there. But the budget process, I felt like getting the council more involved than they have been before, after talking to them and my past experiences and my practices have been to have workshops, to have actual department heads come and sit and discuss their budget, discuss they're the subject matter experts on their particular department. For instance, the police chief and police department. I'm not a police officer. I can talk all day long about what we need and what I see, but as far as the detail of what and they can explain it to me, but it's better to come from them, and it's better if it comes from the public works director, and it's better if it comes from the finance director. So I really want to get them involved, have some public workshops, let the public see how we're doing things and how their money's being spent, and ways we're trying to save and trying to cut. We're very limited with our budget here because we don't have a lot of room for growth. potentially we have new homes that come in because some have been purchased, some of the older homes are purchased and torn down and rebuilt. So we see some improvement there, but not a lot. So we have to be very frugal, very conservative with what we do.
Along those lines, part of what you probably want to do is attract and retain businesses to Neptune Beach. That's a big part of the tax base as well. Are there particular challenges in dealing with the city of Neptune Beach for someone who wants to open a business here?
Seem to be, we try to streamline that process as much as possible. If somebody comes in and either wants to redo a building, they want to remodel, they want to tear down and build, we try to work as closely with individuals that come in to do that so the process doesn't drag on. We have one particular now that company that's looking to put in a grocery store, and they came back in, I believe it was end of August, 1st September, and we talked and we laid things out, and they, you know, they seemed, well, it was a little, didn't seem acceptable to them. Well, here we are, you know, later now in the first of the year, and they came back again. All right, what do we need to do? How can we do this faster? It's like, well, you know, if we started back then, you know, you'd be further along. So attracting business here, it's a little difficult because we don't have a lot of land, obviously. Retaining business is very important because one thing that a lot of chambers and a lot of economic development people do not want to see is empty storefronts, and so that's just as disastrous to me as an empty lot. More so actually, because it looks like potential blight. And while we have an advantage by being where we are, we're small. It's manageable. We don't see too much of that. I think we've had 1 or 2 stores that have been empty, and one was tied up with some insurance because of a fire, and one because it just somebody had moved out and just left them high and dry. And I think it was just a matter of I don't want to say absentee landlord, but it just, you know, they were out of state, and so we had a little time, took some time to get communication with them, but we see some progress going in that area. So, you know, working in other areas where I've worked, you know, that my main focus was economic development and driving that engine. Here, it almost sells itself. People like to come out here. There's a building, you know, less than, you know, 50 yards from where we're sitting going up, and there's, you know, I understand they have 3 shops there, but they've had 9 or 10 people applying to want to come in. So it almost kind of drives itself at this time, you know, with the little better economic times, and it seems like we've got a great opportunity to fill up the stores that may be empty or the new ones being built, but then it presents another problem with some parking and some issues like that, which we're trying to resolve as well and work on. That does go hand in hand with economic development. So, you know, if you can build the stores and you can fill them up, but if you have got nowhere for people to park, they get a little aggravated. So we try to work through that too.
And let's talk about that a little bit, because I know that coming up on the agenda for the Tuesday meeting is another proposal from the Town Center Agency to talk about some of the parking proposals. There's also a change in the parking ordinance that would remove the 50% reduction requirement for parking spaces in Neptune Beach. How do you get your hands around this parking issue? Because everybody says, I love to go to the beach. I love to go to Town Center. I drive around 25 minutes and I can't find a place to park and I go home. How do you get your hands around that problem?
Well, that's very, very difficult to do. Obviously, better people than me have tried. And so what we're doing now is looking at some opportunities. The Town Center agency's coming forward, going to talk a little bit about some opportunities. We are now taking an inventory of our right-of-ways in the city center that possibly could be turned into some sort of parking. So we're trying to increase our numbers a little bit. We have a couple of lots that don't fill up all the time. So we're trying to address that. So we're trying to address that, working with that group to see what we can do, you know, how we can improve that with some trade-offs and that type of thing. It's, you know, everybody understands the problems. We got to work on some of the symptoms of how do we correct that major problem, and we're slowly pulling those pieces together. You know, new police chief coming in is gonna have a perspective on that, and I hope they do. The Town Center Agency, working through them and trying to come up with the best possible solution there. I know one thing that they do talk about is the employee parking with some of the businesses, and most of the businesses don't want their employees at 2 o'clock in the morning walking, 8-10 blocks, and I understand that. So they are trying to come up with a solution there to try to help resolve some of the safety concerns there, which are concerns of mine as well. We want everybody to feel as safe as possible coming to our community, and part of that is having a well lit, having security if needed, our police department. So we're working through some of those things to try to get everybody on the same page, working with Atlantic Beach, the sister city right here with the town center. So we're all meeting together. We just had a meeting, the city manager and I, and Town Center Agency yesterday, actually. So to talk about this, to try to us start communicating, and then we'll bring it to our councils at some point. But on the next meeting, we're going to just kind of talk about it as a council. What would they like to see? How would they like for this to go forward? And so we're really trying to get back down to the nuts and bolts of everything and say, okay, how do we put this together? It'd be nice to say, okay, well, we're going to put a 4-story parking garage and stuff. Well, then what are we going to do without to do that? So land is at a premium out here, is because there's not a lot of that vacant type property. So opportunity presents itself, and hopefully all of us together are smarter, so maybe we can come up with something. And I know they've worked on it a long time prior to me getting here, so I don't have the magic potion or anything that say, okay, this is the way it's going to be. But I think working together is really going to help resolve it and slowly start to get closer. But as we go further and people want to come out here more, you're right. Everybody wants to come to the beach, but they can't find parking. And there's story after story. I circled and circled. Well, I just left, or I drove further down, or I went this way or that way. And sometimes that's money that just left. So we hope to be able to resolve that by working together a little closer and just staying in constant contact with each other instead of everybody kind of trying to do their own thing.
Another issue you inherited is tipping fees.
Yes.
How involved are you in those negotiations with Patrick Krachowski and the city of Jacksonville? Kind of where does it stand right now?
Well, I'm extremely involved, obviously. We had a meeting just earlier this week with the CAO of the city of Jacksonville, Mr. Musa, Sam Musa. Very positive meeting. We've going to come back in a couple of weeks. We've got another meeting. We're trying to get down to where, how much does the city of Neptune Beach owe, and then work some other details and some maybe negotiate a little bit to drive that down a little.
But a couple of our council members think we don't owe them anything, including the mayor.
That is correct. That is correct. And so they've asked us to come up with what we think, and then they're going to come up with what they think it is. So possibly somewhere in the middle, I don't know, but we're going to have to sit down with them and see what we can come up with. And we've got another meeting scheduled. I think it's about a week and a half out, and see if we can't get something else accomplished, and then maybe get some things before the council to see what we can do.
If there's a message that you'd like to give to the citizens of Neptune Beach, what would that be?
Well, the one thing that I really want the citizens of our city to know is that I'm here for them. I've been taught a long time ago, I've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and let's listen twice as much as we speak. So I'm here to listen to them, and I want them to feel comfortable coming to City Hall, engaging with me if necessary. I might not have the answer, so sometimes I want them to come with an answer, because this might be a problem they've thought about for a year, 2 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 hours, but it's that much longer than I've probably been thinking about it, and if I'm not aware of it. And so hopefully we can work together and come up with some solutions. And I'm really trying to improve the city continually, and we really want to be as efficient and good stewards of the taxpayers' money, and we're committed to improving our city. If it might be one step at a time, but we're going to try to make some improvements.
Andy, thanks very much for taking some time to talk with us today.
Appreciate it.